I remember the woman that was leading the ceremony. We drinking. I drank one cup, and I'm just feeling bad the whole time. At the end of the night, she said, "Okay, it's time to close." But what I heard was very different. I heard, "Okay, it's time to close."
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Acid for Squares podcast. I'm your host, Cody Blue.
I'm Tanya Dahl, and today on our show, we have the amazing Kai Karrel. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Kai. Long time coming. So for those who do not know, Kai Karrel is an ayahuascaro and a mystic, to put it in very reductionist, simple terms. And I'd love to start off by having you tell us your story and your journey to ayahuasca and to mysticism and mediumship as well.
Or I've been having a very weird life. And it started very early when I was 8. For some bizarre, unexplained reason, I was very strongly drawn into anything spiritual and religious. Born to an extremely secular family that hates anything to do with religion or spirituality.
Yeah.
And I just felt weird. I'm like, it's not. And I remember watching movies like The Little Buddha, and I'm like crying. And my mom is like, "That's what happens to a child that grows without toys." I'm like, you don't get it. And over the years, eventually, I found myself in an ashram, and I lived in an ashram that actually turned into a very horrendous, horrible cultic experience.
Oh, no.
Which I escaped from at the age of 34. But that's like a 7-hour story. However, that was a very important part of my life. You know the saying, no one is horrible enough not to be a good, bad example. So my ex-guru was such a great, incredible bad example of what not to do and how not to be a teacher and what not to learn. But that led me into a continuation of a journey of really wanting to find a deeper sense of direct experience. And eventually, actually, because of so many years of practicing yoga, meditation, many different traditions, I never wanted to experience any kind of substance, plant medicine, natural, not natural, nothing. And I always had actually a very negative approach to this. Like, you don't need it, I don't want it, it's not necessary. And I moved to a house in San Diego where my roommates were sitting with a shaman that would come to our house, if not weekend, every other weekend. I wanted to live there, and they said, "Listen, there's a lot of ayahuasca going on here. If you don't mind it, no problem." And I remember I'm in my room, there's ceremonies in the living room. I hear purging and like so many sounds, and I'm like, no, I'm never doing
Not
this.
for me.
But then I started joining the sharing circles in the morning, and I was so blown away. I'm like, how is this possible? But more so, seeing months after months, for at least a year, how my roommates are changing in front of my eyes, becoming loving, becoming kind, working on themselves. And I'm like, wow, you know what? One time, let me try what can happen. So I asked my roommates, and we did. And I remember the woman that was leading the ceremony. We drinking. I drank one cup, and I'm just feeling bad the whole time. Stomach aches and nervous. And I look at them, and they're like flying, enjoying, and I'm like, this is really horrible. And then what I remember at the end of the night, she said, "Okay, it's time to close." But what I heard was very different. I heard, "Okay, it's time to close." They all went to sleep. I stayed by myself from that moment until about 7 o'clock in the morning. No music, in a dark room. And what basically happened is that I was so tense and nervous that I basically blocked the entire experience. When I heard it's over, I relaxed. At 7 o'clock in the morning, they came into the room and they see Kai sitting looking at the mirror, crying, and in absolute devotion. They said, "What, you okay? What happened?" And I said, "This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life." And they all laughed. "Oh yeah, of course, first timer." And I said, "No, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And that's pretty much what happened. What was revealed to me, or what I got to experience and see in that first time, is as real to me as looking at you in this moment. And it gave context to all the pain that I've been through, all the suffering, all the years in the cult, everything that I've studied, everything that I learned, all the religions, everything became absolutely clear. And then started the journey from that moment on of joining many different ceremonies in Brazil and Peru, just studying, until it got to a point that my teachers asked me to start serving, to which I said, absolutely not. Why would I possibly want to do this? And it kept on going until in a certain moment, I would give ayahuasca conditions. Well, if you want me, then this needs to happen. And everything happened. But so it would happen. I would say, where will I find medicine? My teacher, here, take it. But without me asking. One thing after the next. And I'm like thinking, what can I say more complicated so it will not happen? And eventually, okay. And that led to years of continuing to study. And I realized that I need to follow, and also my teachers guided me, okay, so let's create what your heart is calling for. And that was the next piece.
There's a lot of people in the world who do more traditional, for lack of a better term, spiritual practices, meditation, breath work, yoga. And there's a perspective that working with plant medicine is somehow an escapist tool, and that it's not on par with means of spiritual practice where you're not using a psychoactive plant. How did sitting in medicine ceremonies for you, how did that dissolve that perception you once had that plant medicine was less than? Did it change? And also, how do you think those two schools of thought go together, being a traditional practitioner of working with modalities that are not bringing in a plant medicine? You know, how did that change you, your perspective?
I'm going to paraphrase a saying by St. Thomas of Aquinas. He speaks about religion, but I'm going to relate this to ayahuasca. And I will say, for those who drank the sacrament, no explanation is necessary. For those who do not, no explanation will suffice.
Truth.
So in that sense, unless you have this direct experience, and this is the reason I chose this path, it is a direct experience. I have a cup of water here. Let me ask you, Cody, are you wet?
No.
Do you believe that you're wet?
No. Now I'm wet.
Do you believe it?
Yeah, I know it.
You know it. And that's the difference. I can meditate, I can look into myself, I can ask the questions, but when you're wet, you're wet. If you never experienced water, no matter how many words about water I'm going to give you, you will not understand. When you choose to drink of the sacrament, and the reason I'm using this word, sacrament, when you drink a sacrament, sacrament brings you into communion, direct conversation, direct experience.
Yeah.
Whether it is direct experience or conversation with self, with angels, with God. But the one element that plant medicines and these teachers have to offer us is direct experience.
Yeah.
Belief is not a part of this path at all.
Yeah.
We talk about that
Yes.
a lot, that ayahuasca is a sacrament, and basically that whatever the higher powers are around us can't really interfere with our life without being asked. And so by taking the sacrament, it's actually opening it up and saying, okay, I am willing to commune with you, and I'm, that is the words that you need, is by actually taking the ayahuasca. So I haven't heard anybody else say that, so that actually makes sense.
And there's another layer to this where, like just you're saying, you are there, you're offered a cup. Now, you say people who practice other traditional practices sometimes say, this is an escape, this is a shortcut, actually. I hear a lot. I will say the same thing. Then take one. If after one cup of ayahuasca, you still believe this is a shortcut, I'll entertain your point of view.
Yeah.
But if there is one thing I can tell you, it's a shortcut for you to face all of those things that you try to hide from yourself. And that's the difference. There's nothing you can do. I can sit, and I've done this. I have truly have practiced almost any religion that you can possibly imagine. Any spiritual practice. I've been an Orthodox Jew, Buddhist monk, Hindu priest, whatever you want. I tried. It's not that I would say I didn't succeed, because there's no goal, there's no success in this. It's a journey for me to discover myself. But a little sip, all those things that I did not want to see came to the surface. I can sit and meditate in front of a wall for a year, but if I have a blind spot, I have a blind spot. And when you are choosing to give permission to divine beings to open your eyes, number one requirement, your permission. And that's why it's external to you. So you actually have the ability to give permission. You know, people comment a little scary because of the unknown. When that unknown becomes even a little bit known for you, you don't only need permission, you need a lot of courage. The further you walk in this path, the more courage you're going to need. And if you feel kind of safe, let me add just a little bit more drops to the cup, and you'll see if you need courage or not. So it actually, not only that it is not a shortcut, it is a commitment to spiritual introspection that I have yet to find anywhere else.
Yeah.
For me. Perhaps for you, yoga is your door. Perhaps for you, yoga invokes these kind of feelings and this kind of introspection. Beautiful, incredible. And I will add even more so, that I believe even for those of us who do take ayahuasca as a sacrament or different plant medicines, without commitment to spiritual practice, you're not going to get far. So it is not something that stands on its own. One of my teachers, Sergio Negri, he says, ayahuasca is a threefold path. The sacrament is the first, meditation, and therapy. You are being revealed parts of your consciousness or subconsciousness that, okay, how do I deal with them? It's not just by drinking more. It's about drinking the sacrament, meditating or introspecting or journaling, like doing the inner work for you, what you can, and also having an external therapist or a group or some kind of psychological process to support this study. And the thing is that, again, as we go deeper in this, you realize, wow, this is a universe. There's so much that I actually need to work on. The shortcut idea really goes out the window very quickly. Can ayahuasca or any plant medicine be an escape? Can meditation be an escape? Can yoga be an escape? Can any practice that you do, from sacred or not sacred sexuality, be an escape? Anything is an escape. For me, the difference is that I have found it's harder for me to escape when I take the sacrament.
Yeah.
It kind of brings me to don't
knees?
escape. To my knees.
I think it would be easier if it was an escape. But I love that you're calling out the difference between belief and knowing, because boy, did I not understand that difference until working with medicine, working with the sacrament.
I don't think anybody can.
Yeah, there's something comfortable about belief because you don't have to fully commit. It's just, I think this is so, but, there's still a little bit of a shred of doubt. The knowing is so extreme that you're confronted with the real reality or the truth of reality.
And there's no going back.
There's no going back. I mean, I thought I was spiritual or agnostic or whatever, and working with the medicine, it's completely different. It is religious without the dogma. It is a divine experience. I also love how they're not mutually exclusive. These spiritual tools that you developed and the medicine, actually those spiritual tools go hand in hand with the medicine. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Let's start with, you said it's a religious experience, and it is for me. It is my religion.
Yeah.
But in the truest sense of the word. So the word religion is religare, which means reconnect. You drink ayahuasca and you reconnect. To what? You reconnect to yourself. You reconnect to nature, which is also an automatic symptom that happens as you follow this path. You miss nature. It's something that you forget. I can tell you that often when I go to the jungle or when I experience indigenous people, I almost always ask them, what do you think is wrong with us in the West? Like, why are we divorced and depressed and we need to take drugs, and why do we need to escape? And one of the most common answers is because you don't have your feet in the earth. You are so far from nature. You forgot what nature is for. For you, nature is a walk in the park. It says, I live in the park. For us, it's like a hobby, I go hiking. It's a unique experience. If I ask, when's the last time that you stood under a waterfall? Almost every person I ask has this face. It's like,
never.
I need to, when? I need to think about it. Where for the indigenous people, it was like 3 hours ago. It's something so natural in their life. And ayahuasca has this like, hey, remember, we are here for you. Nature discharges. So for example, in Umbanda, which we can talk about later, you have heaviness in your heart, you are depressed, go to the ocean. Immerse yourself in the ocean. There's specific ways to do this, but you go to the ocean, you come out, and you're, wow, it's taken from me. So one is that kind of reconnection. The other reconnection is to the inner self, or I would say your inner child. There's a little girl there, there's a little boy there that you kind of made shut up. Some of us for years don't even hear what they have to say. So many people, like that beautiful podcast that I heard with Tony, can access our tears. It's something that for a child is very natural. We can't even access to that. So that's another layer of reconnection. And then more esoterically, there's reconnection with God, which is a very scary word for most people and implies, I say God, so Catholic God, Muslim God, Jewish God. It's like, no, just God. And that word implies so many different things. When you have a direct experience, it's not going to be hard. It's going to be very clear, very simple, not so covered with ideas and explanations that came to you from the outside. So back to your question, why or how the different practices support drinking a sacrament? Exactly like in the Catholic Church, what was the original purpose of a sacrament? To bring you into communion, meaning to bring you into connection. You just bought an iPhone. Let's say you're, have no knowledge of how to use this thing and you're like, just nothing is working. What do? It comes with a manual. So you take the manual and it says, press the right button for 3 seconds and it will turn on. Oh, okay, so I know what to do. Now let me ask you, what would you say to me if I have an iPhone, I have the manual, I put the manual here, and I'm just reading the manual, and I start to study the manual, and I go like this, and I say, I want music, you press play, and I pray the manual, and the manual becomes more important than the iPhone. Ayahuasca is saying, listen, there's no problem with a manual, but when you actually press play, you actually hear music.
Yeah.
When you drink a sacrament, your iPhone starts working.
Yeah.
For example, I'll tell you, sometimes we do in our ceremonies Sufi dancing. Sufi dancing with ayahuasca.
Is that the spinning?
You can't even imagine. So it's the same practice. It's just that I'm putting the manual down for a second to actually hear the music.
Yeah.
It's the plugging back to the electricity.
Mm-hmm.
Your meditation with, not even ayahuasca, your meditation after you discovered parts of yourself while drinking ayahuasca is going to be different. Your yoga practice is going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
Your breath work is going to be different. So it's learning how to be plugged into the wall, discover what you are there to discover, and then continue to the inner work that implies.
Yeah.
Tanya? Talking about your direct connection, right? So ayahuasca definitely gives you that direct connection. It's not reading from a book about something. It is like, oh no, wait, now I'm literally in communion with spirit. This is absolutely wild. And I was telling you earlier, but I've mentioned this on the show before, but my entire life I've been able to see spirits, and I was living in a constant state of fear, and it's actually what brought me to ayahuasca in the first place. The third time somebody was like, you need to go do ayahuasca, I was like, all right, well, I guess the third time's the charm, I'm going to go. And the thing that I was so afraid of every single day of my life, I was waiting for the next thing to happen, the next scary thing, right? Because you watch movies and everything with spirit is scary because it's like ghosts and hauntings, And so as soon as I actually stepped to the cup and met face to face with the spirits, they said, it's been us the whole time. We've been trying to get your attention. And that's why it just kept getting louder and louder and louder and crazier and scarier, because it was like, how much more do we have to do to get you to ask questions and pay attention? And so I have not had any training when it comes to mediumship. And I know that this is something that you work a lot with and you teach people. Could you speak a little bit about mediumship and maybe explain also what it is to people that are listening may not know?
Mediumship is a study of the human soul as it interacts with spirit, with itself, It is a path for developing your own understanding of your subconscious. There are 12 forms, there are many more, but 12 categories of what mediumship entails. So for example, the most known, clairvoyance, which means whether if you're drinking a sacrament or not, but the ability to see things that are not necessarily physically here in the room. Clairaudience, you hear sounds. Clairsentience, smell, taste, all the senses basically. And why are we saying clair? Because it's clear, meaning that the filter of the mind is not in between. And then we have psychography or automatic writing, which one example is Chico Xavier, a famous Brazilian medium who wrote 434 books. Literally, his eyes covered like that, and it's just writing. It got to a place that it became so fast that he would write, and there would be a person standing next to him moving the pages. And he's not involved in the process. So there's automatic writing. Then there is irradiation, which is external spirit to you irradiating or influencing your physical body. And that happens to most of us when we drink ayahuasca. The body starts to shake. At first, it does not look intelligible, meaning I'm just shaking. I don't know exactly what I'm doing. But as you develop in that, and as you soften and relax and you don't freak out, it actually starts to become much more articulated. After that, we have incorporation, which means, or embodiment, where the spirit pushes your consciousness out and spirit comes in, more like a trance state. And we have this in all religions and all traditions. And another one after that would be excorporation, which means you are connecting to the essence of the energetic of that spirit, and the spirit is coming from the inside out. That is quite incredible. These are different, let's call it phenomenons that happen as a medium develops their skills or their ability to connect to this. Every human being is already a medium, because right now you're mediuming your own spirit. This is a body, and you have a spirit inside of you. Just for now, you think that's the only driver that can drive this car. That's not necessarily true. Many people, for example, had a car accident, like in their physical car, and they're saying, I'm looking at my body and I'm not there. So they had this experience of ex-body experience. Mediumship is, while I'm out, let's have someone else drive my car, for example. So it is a process which actually requires a lot of building character. Also, Chico Xavier, that medium I mentioned before, says the first limitation to developing mediumship is called excited imagination. So you find out in the process of studying mediumship, wow, actually, this is my ego wanting to be seen. So it is actually a very spiritual journey in developing your inner self. Also, for example, could be the opposite, fake humility, where you're like, no, nothing, I don't want to say. So it's a lot of different stages in developing of the human character in the process, which this is basically what this is for, is a spiritual path to allow the development of self.
Yeah.
The end of this journey is to reach a place of absolute acceptance, self-love, and surrender to the divine plan.
Yeah.
Emotion is energy in motion. Prayer is emotion with devotion. Mediumship is devotion in motion. So you eventually get to this place that this shaking that we were talking about and the moving of a spirit becomes an expression or an instrument of your devotion. When you make a connection between that and your feeling for something you do not know at first, and an angel comes through you, and all you feel are tears coming down your face, and your body is shaking in a certain miraculous, weird way, but your heart becomes an ocean. So your movement becomes an expression of your devotion. And there the magic starts, because like the water from before, you've touched an angel, or more to say, an angel just touched you. And we'll never be the same. There's a saying about Archangel Uriel. He says, if you only feel for 1 second how your guardian angel sees you, your life is complete.
So
You're just making me cry over here.
Yeah, that was so beautiful the way you just broke that down, because we made a show, Awaken Underground. It was on healing with psychedelic medicines. And it just got kept in sort of this place of like, this is what you're looking to heal. and then this is the healing, and this is the science of the healing, right? And we sort of focused on that. But in our experience, the actual healing itself, what happens, it's as real as us sitting here right now, what is unlocked, these motions, these light codes, speaking light language, these clairvoyance, clairaudience, all these phenomenon that you just expressed are the mechanisms in which the healing is expressed and happens. Mm-hmm. And to us, we go, oh my God, everybody has this ability. It's your birthright. It's your natural gift. It's not that person's a psychic, that person's a medium, that person's a shaman. No, that is the natural state. It's been programmed out of us since we were kids. And that programming that is blocking these abilities is the same thing in which is holding the disease itself, the depression, the anxiety. They're one and the same. They're connected. So we've essentially come to believe and understand that this is everyone's birthright. Everyone has these gifts, and we're being held, these diseases and this illness are held in the cultural programming and keeping us from evolving into our higher state of being, what we really are. And, you and Tanya both spoke about the importance of sacrament, of an initiation, almost like you cannot receive until you ask. And we've come to believe that their free will, so this law of free will plays a very big part into this, that the individual has the right, the God-given right to be and do and live however they want. But if you ask for help, if you take the sacrament, you will be given what you're looking for. It may come in a different, not the way you expected. You could walk in an atheist and think none of this is real, but you will very quickly find out that you are more than you ever thought you were. And life is more amazing and magical and mysterious than we ever thought. Can you speak to the nature of free will and why we have free will and why the sacrament bypasses this law to invoke the presence of these spirits and angels, whatever you want to call them, to help you heal and, rise to a higher state of consciousness and a more healthy state of consciousness?
Have 3 months for this answer?
Sure, for you, yeah.
Free will is actually the most important question that you can have as a human being. Starting this journey means that you're willing to become a question mark. Up until this moment, you follow. They tell you that you need to be this or that. Tanya lives, let's say, in LA, and she goes to sleep at night in her bed, and she looks around. Here's the clock, here's the watch, here's the light, here's the thing, everything that you know, okay? And then tomorrow morning, you wake up you're in your bed, but you're looking around, and you're in a different town, in the middle of the town, and people are walking around. Everything looks different to you. She'll be like, what happened to me? Where am I? How did this happen? And then a person comes by and say, why are you in your bed in the middle of the street? She said, I don't know. What's going on? Say, what do you mean what's going on? Get out of bed. Like, go to work. I can get you work. You want me to get you a job? Like, okay. And she gets a job and starts a life. And then you need to go to university. You need to have kids. But she will not be able to do that. Because she'll be like, pause. There's something really weird happened here. Cody, this was happened to you. You were in the astral. You were not in this body. And you woke up one day in a weird place.
Yeah.
Bizarre. And people tell you need to go to university and pay taxes. And you're like, yeah, okay, I will do it. You will eventually reach a moment that you're like, 1 second, this is really weird. Why am I doing this? Who told me that I need to want this or like that or not like avocados? Why? Who told you? And there's so many things that you're taking as an axiom that that's what reality is, and that's how it is. And this is another thing that ayahuasca kind of slaps your face, where it's like, maybe not. Maybe things are not as solid as you think that they are. So free will is what you're experiencing when you're coming closer to this question is actually first you will go through what's called the dark night of the soul, where the things that you're used to will start to feel boring or lose their taste or lose their... So like, what those things that you thought are making you happy, like the newest iPhone or the whatever it is it really making me happy? Because I'm not. And most people eventually get to that a little bit of emptiness that without guidance goes into depression, goes into negative addictions and different things like that. But it's actually a very unique and important what we call spiritual emergency. Emergency in a sense of you are feeling, oh my God, like I'm not happy, this is a huge problem. But it is also your moment of emergence. You can emerge from that with the will to start and question, what am I? What do I actually want? Where do I want to go? There's a beautiful saying. It is a way of darkness to act without permission. It is the way of light to honor your free will. What we call obsessor spirits, mocking spirits, vicious spirits, they have a way of interacting with you. They don't need your permission. The way that they operate is by influencing or irradiating negative energy, which you will translate as a negative thought. So, for example, it will be, I'm stupid, I'm lazy, I cannot do this, I cannot do that. Now, you think it's you because you're not taught any differently. People would often tell me, I've never seen a mocking spirit. I don't know that how do you know that that negative thought is you or not you? How do you know? In this moment, in your gut, there are good bacteria and bad bacteria. Have you ever seen them?
No.
No. Do you know them by name?
No.
Do you know if you have a lot of them, what happens to your body?
It's out of balance.
And you feel you have a stomach ache.
Yeah.
So there is a negative symptom that even though you never seen these germs, never talked to them by name, in a way, you are their God, you're their universe, right? And they're affecting your universe. Now, okay, I have a stomach ache. So what do? You take a probiotic or something, and suddenly there's balance in the universe. When you start to study mediumship specifically, basically I'm starting to explain to you how these germs operate, and that your depression or certain emotions or certain behavior are an imbalance of influence that is coming from the outside. The fact that you don't see it does not mean that it does not exist. The symptoms do. Your depression you see, your sadness you see, your heaviness you see. A very good example. Have you ever happened to you that you go, let's say in a subway in New York, you're feeling great, you go down the subway and you come out after 2 stops and you feel like someone hit you like a ton of bricks. You're heavy and you're tired. What happened? Just 2 stops? Like, what happened to you? In Spiritism, we explain that around the body, there's a layer called Perispirit. Perispirit, the word peri is half, so it's half spirit, half matter. And it's get influenced by different spirits and energetics that come from other people and from around us. When you're in such a cramped space like that, you're going to be influenced by other germs, mocking spirits, obsessor spirits. By the time you came out of the subway, you have a natural protection mechanism where your perispirit says, I don't want those thoughts and I don't want those feelings, and it contracts. In that contraction, is going to be exactly what you're going to feel. Heavy, weird, you need to take a shower, you want to really clean this. When you study Spiritism, you start to realize, okay, but there are certain movements, there are certain techniques, there's certain things that you can do that immediately remove them. So I can hold on to my stomach ache forever, but if I know that if I take a probiotic, I feel better, I'd rather have a probiotic in my pocket. So you start to study the phenomenology of spirit as it interacts with human physical body and spirit. That, and I'm coming back to free will. For you to be able to do that, it requires free will. But interesting, for you to acknowledge that there are even, let's say, angel spirits or anything external to you, which for many people is very challenging. Unicorns, what's next, right? For you to acknowledge this requires humility, to acknowledge the very basic thing that you perhaps don't know everything.
Yeah.
Perhaps, not for sure, maybe I don't have all the answers. That humility is the gateway for you to discover free will. The willingness to question life itself. I was just teaching about Alice in Wonderland. You need to be a little mad and start to ask the right questions.
Yeah, we're all mad here.
We're all mad here.
Well, this is interesting. You're talking about spiritism and what'd you call it? What was the terminology? I've never heard that.
Perispirit.
Okay, Perispirit. Okay, this is interesting for us because we have the teachings of our teachers, and some of the stuff we don't understand, we follow it and we put into practice, and if we feel better, we feel better, and we go, well, we don't know a lot, and let's just listen to our teachers, and we'll discover it through direct experience, in ceremonies. So we've known to at least communicate everything you're talking about as frequency at this point. So Perispirit, is that something that's coming from within us, or is that something coming from outside forces? Is it coming from other people? How do we navigate and bring that into our cosmology, especially, and I will speak humbly, this is something I personally have because I have fear of accepting it as reality, that there is anything negative from outside forces. It's hard for me to integrate into my cosmology. But obviously, the more we know, we just know we don't know shit. So can you speak a little bit to what these perispirits or frequencies are that are out of alignment from, let's say, our highest good or the higher self or God?
Well, maybe a word about what is spiritism, where it comes from, and I highly recommend. I said before to Tanya, there's an incredibly beautiful movie about the founder of the spiritist movement. It's not a religion; it's an explanation about the spirit phenomena, and it is called Kardec. I saw it on Netflix, maybe somewhere else, but Kardec was a scientist that at his time in France and in Spain, there started a phenomena of people sitting around a table, seances, tables moving, and all weird things that he was called in as a scientist to disprove. So he did. Initially, he disproved that they're putting a fan under the table or weird things. But he did come across a couple of places where he could not disprove. So he said, okay, before I just say no, let me ask some other questions. And in this process of asking these questions, he became the most known spiritist in the world, where he said, listen, I give up. I have more proof than not. And he's called the codifier because he basically utilized everything that he studied to kind of get a certain kind of code of how spirits operate in the astral. Later on, that has been, up to today, we're talking 1800s, up to today, this has been expanded by 1,000-fold. So much is known to us more than ever before. And definitely for those of us who work with sacraments, it's a reality. It's not like an imagination. It's like, okay, I see things. It's becoming more and more real, which is, of course, debatable. Within Spiritism, we have a very logical and clear explanation about the phenomena of human life and what happens to us before, during, and after, and why. Why are we even here? So there's a lot of questions that it really helps us understand. In that, there are certain practices, certain tools, certain ideas, and Perispirit is kind of in the core of them. And what does it explain? It explains that in your core, let's call it, like the most essential part of you is your soul. And in Spiritism, your soul is called the Trinity Flame, which also has a lot of explanations around it. But okay, let's say your soul, the element of your soul is fire. Your physical body surrounds your soul, which your soul is 100% spirit, your body is 100% matter. It's like a steak, right? If I take my spirit out, the steak falls to the floor. It's like a card. It's only completely matter. And the element here is earth. I'm from, ashes to ashes. I'm completely matter. How does the matter interact with the spirit if they're completely separate things? By another layer, which is called perispirit, half spirit, half matter. Often people refer to that as an aura, but the word aura kind of feels like something magnetic or like electric. However, in Spiritism, we relate to the perispirit is actually water. Your perispirit interacts with your body in certain ways. There's certain phenomena that explain to you as you study this what's going on. But I'll give you one small example. Remember what I said about the subway? The way that the perispirit is influenced by external entities, forces, thoughts even, patterns, frequencies, whatever you want to call it, is like ink blot in water. You put a cup and you put ink and it's like tentacles like that. These are thoughts, feelings, emotions that are starting to influence you. Now they're here because your perispirit is about a few feet away from your body. It changes. When you're in love, it expands. When you're very afraid or in the subway, it contracts. So this tentacle is starting to go in and get closer. What happens when it actually touches your body? Disease. So the idea in Spiritism is like, you need to figure out all what's going on. What is influencing me? And that's where, for example, teachers like Louise Hay will tell you that the disease is the last layer of your illness. It is a response of you not listening to your emotions and your heart and your psyche, who have been screaming, I'm depressed, I'm sad, I'm alone. And you're like, no, I don't. And eventually you ignore and ignore and ignore until it becomes disease. If you go to a spiritist center or different places who work with this kind of mediumship, the mediums heal by flickering their hands above your body because they're removing these tentacles. But more than just removing them, they'll tell you, for example, for some person, you have a lot of remorse. You need to work on that. You didn't heal from your last relationship. You didn't process grief. That's a very common one. You didn't complete that, so it's there. You need to work on that. So their diagnosis about, they don't care almost about your physical illness. It's like, okay, that's already too late. That already happened. I need to figure out what happened before that you chose to ignore. Back to free will. You have chosen out of your absolute free will to allow yourself to ignore. That's what ignorance is. To push away the strong signals that your psyche has been giving you. So often I hear people, and I see this as not understanding a very clear message around negative emotions. You're angry a lot, you're depressed, you are sad, stuff like that. So imagine that these signals are like you and I are driving in a car, and suddenly the red light of the oil is blinking. What do you need to do?
Put gas in it.
Right? But if I sit next to you and I say, oh, I see there's a light in the dashboard, I have a hammer, and I take the hammer and I break the dashboard, and no more red light. That's what we're doing with our negative emotion. It's, hey, there's a problem in the system. Okay, so let me take Advil or something. So the light, let me just break it.
Yeah.
So I will not actually put the thing that actually I'm asking for. Your Perispirit is that dashboard.
Okay.
Listen, depression, listen, sadness, listen, grief.
So it's the middleman between like spirit and being able to understand what's happening in your body?
Yes. It's a loud message when you start to know how to listen to it.
Yeah.
And it's harder to ignore.
It starts off as a whisper for sure. Everything is always like a whisper. Then it's like a nudge. Then it's like a push. And it's like, it gets really loud. And then you're like, once spirit starts yelling at you, you're screwed.
I was literally raised like to believe that, and I think this is very big in like masculine culture, like that emotions are an inconvenience. There's something to be overcome. And then if you essentially can overcome your emotions and, that is mastery of them. It's almost a very stoic philosophy of handling emotions, as opposed to, no, they're trying to tell you something, they're serving you, and there's no such thing as bad emotions. They're just telling you something in particular. This is fascinating. And it makes
what you just described is the hammer.
Yeah, it's the hammer. Exactly.
Basically, let's just break it.
It makes a ton of sense because we see, and we've been a part of healings and ceremonies where we watch physical illness be healed on the level of spirit. We've talked about Tanya healing her physical injury of her back on this show, working with ayahuasca. My first formal medicine ceremony with a shaman, I had a back brace on from a stress fracture for getting mugged in Harlem. So it's a physical injury, but a spiritual ceremony healed it. I've never worn that back brace again. I've never had a back problem. So it makes sense. And, when you really have these experiences, these, walk with spirit, you can understand how a spiritual ailment can manifest in a physical event that your mind believes is where the physical illness is coming from. But it's much deeper than that. One of the questions I have, because working in ceremony, especially with medicine, with sacrament, I'll often be greeted, especially in the beginning, with something very dark. And in the beginning, I was so scared because I didn't understand it. And I have the cultural program, even if I'm not Christian, it's still the Christianity is in the program. So when I start seeing all these things, I would think it was like demonic or bad, and I would run from it. And I would sit there in suffering, running and resisting from the medicine for ceremony after ceremony, year after year. And once I faced it and didn't run from it, it would change into spirit, and it was almost the initiation into the deeper teaching. And it always made me question, like, am I seeing something that's bad? Am I seeing like a negative spirit? Or is that just the spiritual initiation to understand that everything is divine, everything is sacred? I remember once I did a ceremony, they gave me, the medicine was showing me like this reptilian face growling at me. And I'm like, oh, reptilians, like, it's a bad thing. And, so I'm able to face this reptilian growling at me in his face with love. And what do you have to teach me? What do you have to show me? Not, let's run away, it's a bad thing. And the medicine, this was the psilocybin mushroom, it then fanned the face of the reptilian almost like a clock. And it was all these different faces, from different aliens to spirits to beings to animal totems. And it fanned it like numbers on a clock. And then it all came to one singular face, and it was all white. And it said, we have many names, we have many faces, we are all the Ancient One. And wow. So my question for you is there nothing to fear when it comes to being faced with these shadow archetypes? Is the point to be integrated harmoniously like the gut bacteria? Or is there E. coli that needs to be, expunged or killed or eliminated? Is it just, creation out of harmony, or is there bad and good?
On one hand, I would say the greatest thing that you have to fear is obviously yourself, but in a sense of that you will choose not to have the courage to look at yourself, not afraid of who you can be, or that you will not have the courage to actually say, I want to see, I want to face my smallness, I want to face my need for exaggeration, need for attention. That is really scary, because that means you're stuck. So that would be, I would say, the scariest part of this journey, that you will actually utilize this energy to walk backwards. Are there scary visions in the journey? Yes, especially in the beginning. So let's say, take yourself to first time that you have this experience. Any vision is scary. Sensations, you think you're dying, your hand is expanding, I don't know. So, but what is the difference between the first one to the 1,000? What happened in 1,000 ceremonies? You just learn how to relax.
Yeah.
And you also know, okay, it's going to be, that is scary right now, and then later it'll be unicorns and it'll be fun. And so you actually, the only thing that changed is that your tension was now released, and you're willing to see things for what they are. No matter how scary the vision was, reptilian, I am afraid of sharks. So for maybe a shark, whatever it is, or someone maybe like a scary donut or something, whatever it is, has it ever physically touched you?
Yeah. No.
Has it ever, did like the donut jumped? Nothing, right? Yeah. So you just need to learn how to relax into it. Also, there's a lot of physical sensations that you are physically feeling short of breath, or like, but the same thing, it's just, and let go. And after 100, 200 times that you do this, you realize, wow, what I was afraid of in day one, I'm passing like in 2 minutes. It's like, okay, done. And all I need to do is relax. Remember in Sesame Street, I think Elmo. So he has a cookie jar, and he puts the hand in the cookie jar, and he takes the cookie, and he wants to take his hand out to eat the cookie, but he can't, because the jar he's holding the cookie, so he can't. So he goes to Cookie Monster, says, can you help me? I need you to break the jar. And what does Cookie Monster say? Just open your hand and the cookie will come to you. So in the beginning, you're so freaked out that you're holding all the cookies inside of the jar and wanting to break it. And then you feel like that, like, oh my God, there's so much tension. Fear of letting go of an imaginary sense of control that you think that you have in life. And as you let it go, the cookies come.
Can you speak on what you just said, an imaginary sense of control that you think you have? Because you're speaking about free will, and you also said something earlier about devotion. And devotion is sort of like a word that we don't really understand, but I've never said this publicly, but it's interesting. I've almost come to this point personally. I'll speak for myself, Tanya, but I guess we both have. But it's almost like you have to use your free will as a gift, but you have to, the more work we do, the more it's almost like we're using our free will to surrender it to a higher intelligence, and understanding that higher intelligence has our best interest at heart, and it's almost a mechanism of initiation into the cosmos. We always talk about how parents will try to protect a child from all the hardship they had to go through. But in trying to protect the child, they're controlling it and keeping it from certain realities and truths. And what happens? The child rebels. And then, of course, the child goes into the world, experiences all the suffering that the parent was trying to protect it from. And what does the child do? It comes back. In storytelling, it's known as the atonement with the father. And they realize, and what do? They atone with their parents, and typically they take care of them as their parents go out and become more and more childlike, and the cycle continues. Exactly. So can you speak to devotion and essentially like what this, well, I guess it's a question. Do you believe that that is the point of free will, is to surrender to this higher intelligence that has your back, to this greater cosmos of this family of beings? You can call them whatever you want, your ancestors, your angels, that you are supported and that you're not really in control. The only thing you control is your ability to open up to support and help.
How long have I known you guys?
Couple minutes.
Couple minutes, yeah.
90 minutes.
Can you hold her hand?
Yeah.
Close your eyes. Why are you smiling right now?
Because I love her. It's my woman.
Why do you love her?
She's the best. She's an angel.
The answer you're looking for is I actually don't know.
I don't know anything.
It happened to me.
It did happen to me.
You didn't rise in love. You fell in love.
Yeah, that's true.
Why did you fall in love with each other?
I don't know that. You're right. It doesn't feel like I chose this. It happened.
In other words, it happened outside of your control. You fell into a sense of devotion. You fell into another person's eyes. There's no explanation to this. There is a flutter that happens inside of your soul. There is a knowing that you want to spend time with this person. In other words, devote parts of your time to her. She, for whatever reason, unexplained, wants to be devoted to you. Devotion in this kind is the first moment that you're actually willing to say, I'm willing to go mad. I'm willing to do something that maybe not be so sensical and maybe not so like make sense and I need to do this and there's a reason behind it. I don't know why I'm doing this. It just feels amazing. Devotion to God or to a higher being or whatever you want to call it is exactly like your devotion to Tanya.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same. There's absolutely no reason for it. The only reason is that when you do this, there are tears of devotion coming out of your eyes. Yeah. Remember before I said about mediumship that it is devotion in motion? This is devotion in motion. The motion between masculine and feminine, the movement in and out, the connection, in creativity, the creative force that comes from this togetherness. Mm-hmm. You fall in love with the innocence of the person that you see, the essence of them, who they truly, truly are. And when you see their innocence, something happens to you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That innocence leads to compassion in the sense of if she's sick, if she's, oh my God, I need to take care of her. And these two together flame creativity, which is also the creative force. And in Hebrew, the word creativity, sexual urge, form, creation are all the same. So sexuality flares in the creativity of like this incredible room that I'm sitting in, mm-hmm. the connection, the love. It's all a reflection of what? Of an unexplained falling into devotion. Now, about higher self or higher being or higher reality, no one will ever know if God exists or not. In a sense of, I have an answer. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he lives in Brooklyn. There's no
Sky Daddy.
There's no address. There's no name. And that's why also, for example, in Judaism, in Hebrew, God's name is the name. In the Muslim tradition, Allah has 1,000 names. Krishna, 1,000 names. Just because these are attributes, it's not actually the thing. Her name, Tanya, but you call her babe, you call her baby, you call her sweetie. That's all attributes of your devotion to her, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel if he says Tanya or babe or baby, he's still talking about you, yeah. Right? So the name actually is not what matters, but it does a little bit, like you can feel what he wants of you in that specific moment. If God, let's say, created all of this to have servants loving him, then that love is not authentic. Mm-hmm. Imagine, Tanya, let me ask you. Every 8 o'clock a.m. in the morning, you're in bed, comes Cody. He's looking at his clock. 8. I love you. Okay, weird. That was Monday. Tuesday, he comes. 8. I love you. After 3-4 days, you'll be like, what you doing? He says, I'm practicing love to you. What do you mean? Practicing, because I don't really feel it. So every day I decided to make it a practice, and every day at 8 o'clock, I'm going to tell you, yeah, I love you. What are you going to say to him? Get out of here. I don't want your fake practice love. What is the difference if your devotion is to go to Sunday at church at 11? I love you guys. Has absolutely no meaning. Devotion is actually when it just happens. When it is an authentic expression exactly like this relationship. It's something that comes without explanation, without direction, without knowing. It just happens. It's a spontaneous expression of life itself in itself. So devotion in that sense, and it relates to free will because again, the same thing. It's like, is it practice or is it truly what I want? You don't want a partner that's there because of any kind of reason. Oh, because he has a lot of money. No, that's not the reason to be in a relationship. I want to be in a relationship because I want you and I'm devoted to you and I don't even know why. Right?
Yeah.
That's the same devotion we're talking about.
This is absolutely beautiful. Thank you.
And true.
Kai, you're just so good with your words, let me tell you.
Thank you.
So, okay, something that I would love to hear your thoughts on is, so we talk about spirits a lot, right? So we talk about these different entities that are around that, in different religions, they say, oh, this particular god does this and this particular goddess does that. So are they actually beings or are they just energies that hold some sort of like vibration that can like help you with something? Does that make sense?
Yes, both and neither.
Okay.
My favorite saying about angels is you are standing in front of an angel and saying, but I don't believe in angels. And the angel answers, but I believe in you. So on one hand, the existence of angels or not makes only difference to you. In a sense of that sense of devotion that we were talking about before is something that brings life to you, brings faith, brings motivation, brings inspiration. If I could prove to you that that angel exists really scientifically in a lab or not, back to the same example. So if I could take a sample of his DNA and proven to you scientifically that he's in love with you, it means absolutely nothing. If it's actually really or not actually, what it does, what it invokes inside of me. So in the neither is, if let's say they do not exist in a physical form like that, then what is important is what my belief or devotion does to me. Because for some people, their belief in any kind of spirit actually is very disempowering because they're afraid that if they don't fulfill whatever the being is asking, they're going to hell or they're going to be punished or something like that. I would say, yes, there is, but perhaps not in the exact way that we as limited beings can understand. Simple example that many people who are angelologists, do you know that there's a job?
Didn't know that.
There's a job. An angelologist, people who study angels, will tell you that archangels have 5 genders. Male, female, binary, meaning in between. And what are the other 2? Beyond human comprehension. It's something that we cannot understand. But this concept means that what you think an angel is, which is like a man with wings, not exactly. Can it appear to you in this form? Yes. Because of your own positive projection of what I can relate to. But it is not a power of faith or a power of belief. It's the willingness to be curious and ask the right questions. Albert Einstein said this. He said, nature does not reveal its secrets. It only responds to a series of questions. The fact that you don't have the answer is only because you did not ask the right question.
Truth.
And that's this journey of being a better questioner, where the first question would be, who am I? Leading to, what is my free will? That begins down the rabbit hole of Alice in Wonderland. That's where she goes. Do you remember the signs in Wonderland, this way, that way, the other way, the other way. There is no way. The only way that she eventually discovers is herself. She meets the caterpillar. What does he ask? Who are you? She says, Alice. And he says, hardly Alice. Maybe if you drink a little bit more ayahuasca. At the end, he says, because she's going through a lot of different processes, at the end he says, you're getting there. You're almost Alice. And in the entire movie, the question is, are you the Alice? She says, I'm an un-Alice. And the whole movie is about Alice finding her muchness, her greatness, her truth, her essence. And this is what this journey is about, to have more and more courage to ask uncomfortable questions of yourself. We are to each other fanning what's called the sparkle or glimmer of truth. When we have conversations that are about this kind of topics, devotion develops, thirst to find more. And that's why we're having in them. But the answers are clear from the beginning.
Right. There's something, and we're both screenwriters, and there's something, a phenomenon in screenwriting, or storytelling, I should say. And the highest form of storytelling, you're taking the spiritual, something that's happening internal within the characters of the world, and you're making it physical. Yeah, some will call it a hot item. And the best stories have this. So an example is Lord of the Rings. There's a ring. You're taking this spiritual ailment of power, absolute power corrupts, right? And you're putting it into this ring. And the hero needs to take the ring, resist its power, and drop it in the volcano. It's something spiritual, but by making it physical, it allows the human, allows the characters to essentially experience this spiritual force in a physical way. That makes a good story, and it's something that we can understand. That's why the world and spirit communicates in symbols. So it makes a lot of sense to hear you talk about archetypes, symbolically, and not get lost on the personification of it. Early in my days working with ayahuasca, it's for me, the medicine is very of frequency, and the frequency is very ancient, and for me, especially at that time, very alien. It was so unknown to me. It was so bizarre and strange, and this ancient alien frequency. And I remember going into a ceremony, stating my intention to myself and sort of like complaining a little bit, being like, why can't you come as like angels with like, why can't you be this like angelic, beautiful thing? Like, why is it gotta be so weird and strange and
Creepy and
unknown
alien.
and creepy?
Reptilian.
Like, why is it gotta be like that, right? So we drink the cup, the lights go out 15 minutes into the medicine, right? So the medicine hasn't even hit. And I see a figure walk up to me, and I assume it's the shaman. And I look up, and they're standing at the end of my mat. I lean forward because I think they're trying to tell me something like be quiet or, whatever. And I lean into the figure, stand at the mat, and I see their face is all blurred out. And next thing I know, I'm wrapped in fluffy wings. It feels like pillows. I'm wrapped in them, and I just start crying. I couldn't believe, like, my prayer was heard, my complaint was heard. Like, why can't you come forth as like a more like, and I just cry. I'm like, the fact that I was even heard and the medicine hadn't begun, and then the medicine kicked in and it got weird real fast. But still, the message was clear.
Complain. That's the message.
Yeah,
Just time to complain.
I asked for it to come nicer, and it came nicer to me. We're gonna give you what you want, then we're gonna show you what you need.
See, ask and you shall receive.
Ask and shall you receive. Kai, you're beautiful, brother. This is amazing, and people who are listening to this show, that is a sacrament. They know what this is, and they press play, and they're choosing to initiate themselves into the unknown. They're asking questions, and that's what we only have more questions. The more we know we know nothing. The more answers we get, the more questions we have. So thank you for coming on and being able to share your wisdom and teachings with us. You have an open invitation to come back whenever you would like.
Next time you'll have to come and get weirder.
Yeah.
Every time, just a little bit weirder.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah,
Tell
okay.
us.
There's a lot to go.
Everything you held back, we want to hear that stuff next time. Is there anything you would like to leave the world with? Any wisdom, any teaching that you think we need right now at a time of great change and transition? There's wars all over the place. What would you leave us with? What do you think we need to know from all the work you do?
People are beautiful, and that there is an inherent innocence in all of us. A lot of these wars that we're seeing and the violence that's happening in the world is a result of ignoring an inner call of this little girl and little boy that's inside of us. I would add that maybe a lot of these wars can be avoided if the leaders would drink ayahuasca, but
Yeah, ain't that the
Yes,
truth?
please.
I really believe so, because I think it will, but let's say that's not so likely to happen. But the point that I'm trying to say is that what the world I do believe requires in whatever form is a commitment, internal, each person to themselves. Even if, let's say, I'm right now, I'm not in war with anyone, but there is a subtle kind of war that's inside of me. And me hating myself or not liking myself or my negative wording to myself, it's one more drop to the collective hate. And I truly, truly believe from what I see is that these eruptions of violence and war, you can help start your little drop by maybe being a little bit more kinder to yourself and loving yourself more. And I really believe that this journey, with the sacrament or without, is about falling in love with ourselves, coming back to our birthright of who we truly are. And the way I see it is this. It's like a pot of water that's on the stove. It's cold, so all the water looks the same. And then the heat starts, and one bubble is rising to the surface, and then another one. Now, how the bubbles at the top get heated? By the friction that they have with the other ones that are going up. The first ones are in the bottom, which is you, which is maybe me, which is for sure Jeff. We are working on ourselves. We are very, pioneers of consciousness that really, really push the edge of what's comfortable for a bubble to sustain what kind of heat. And our friction with others help this entire pot to eventually heat up. But what is this heat that we are confronted with is the willingness to stand in our weakness. It sounds hippie, but what we need is love, but what we need is self-love. What we need is the ability to truly look into the mirror and acknowledge it's not working. This self-hate, this continuous belittlement of the human spirit and the human nature has not worked so well for us. And we need new tools and new technologies and new education of how to relate, how to talk to your girlfriend, how to speak to your parents, how to understand your own wounding, how to understand addiction. And I believe that this kind of work, what we're doing now, is the beginning of a world who's walking towards free will that includes devotion to the self and the understanding that the heart whispers while the mind is shouting. And until we start to listen to the whisper of the heart, things will continue in the way that they are. But we'll end on a positive note. I do believe this is happening. And I believe ayahuasca came to us in this time as a slap on our face. Mm-hmm. We're like, come on, guys, if you don't kind of speed up the process, I think things are not going to go our way. So whether it is ayahuasca or any other plant medicine or any other practice that you do, demand of yourself self-love. Don't compromise on living this precious human life that you have. Every moment, every opportunity, every possibility that you have to look inside, to inquire, to ask of yourself for greatness. Know that you are an active participant in the healing process of Mother Earth.
Kai, thank you so much for being here today.
My
we
pleasure.
definitely are going to have you back.
Whenever you want, I'm pretty close.
Awesome. Perfect.
To be continued, brother. Be well, and thank you for all you are and all you do. We appreciate you. And thank you for coming on to share your wisdom and teachings and your life story and journey that you're continuing to walk on.
Is there anywhere people can find you online?
My website, KaiKarrel.com.
Okay.
A lot of my crazy writing is there.
Oh, nice. Okay. Mm-hmm. Crazy writing at KaiKarrel.com. If you've gotten this far, thank you so much for listening. Please like, share, follow, and tune in next time. We'll see you Monday.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.